Well, it's called a true treasure in the city of New Orleans. It's not its food, it's not its music, but it's a cemetery with a unique location. Andrew McRae has the story in this week's American Countryside.
New Orleans' location near the mouth of the Great Mississippi River made it an important city from its earliest days. This low and often swampy elevation quickly caused problems when residents died and were buried.
You can imagine what happens to a wooden buoyant casket which is forced below the ground and the water table rises. Floodwaters could come up over the banks of the river, break caskets apart, and send human remains washing through the streets of the city when it rained heavily. So the first response to this was to simply place the cemeteries outside the limits of the city.
But as the city grew, there simply wasn't a suitable place to be found for in-ground burials. A system developed here to not only bury the dead above ground, but to also move those bodies as time passed.
There are three basic types of the reusable burial. They all have one thing in common, and that is a tradition that a year is the minimum amount of time they'll leave a casket in there before they move it for the next one. They say a year and a day, which is presumably the minimum amount of time it takes for a body to break down enough so you can move it.
Here at the Lafayette Cemetery No. 1 in the city's Garden District, bodies are placed in a casket and interred in a wall vault or a family tomb. After 1 year or more of time has passed, the body is moved within the vault to create more space for others who have died.
To this day, they throw the caskets away, and that always catches people's attention if they've never seen a casket in a garbage can before. It's a very unusual image to people who aren't familiar with it.
Some of the tombs here are for members of a social organization or specific group. For instance, firefighters and their families might all be placed in a common tomb for which they paid dues during their lifetime. The system of burials is commonplace to longtime residents here. However, for tourists, it's something so intriguing, many take a tour to learn more.
You always bury in the top vault first. You begin to move remains down until it's full. Then you need to wait for the year and a day, after which you take the remains out of the bottom vault and you put them into a chamber in the foundation, which is known as a caveau. And there's no shortage of space down there.
The method saves space and money, but perhaps there's a more important reason for the many who are interred in these historic cemeteries within the city.
They're very meaningful for families because you could have literally 8 or 10 generations of a family buried in one tomb.
On All Saints' Day, many families will come to their tomb to remember their loved ones, maintain the place, and even picnic in the cemetery. The New Orleans Jazz Funeral celebrates a person's life through upbeat music. They are traditions that make the rituals associated with one's death unique compared to most of the rest of the country.
First of all, you've got cemeteries that are magnificent to look at, can be referred to as open-air museums. You've got occasions like All Saints' Day that are actually pleasant, and this is the city that invented the jazz funeral, you know? There's a bumper sticker that says, New Orleans, we put the fun in funeral.
The cemeteries here in New Orleans are certainly unique when compared to the rest of the nation. They are customs that date to the beginning of this city. While remembrances take place here throughout the year, traditions like the jazz funeral and gatherings of family on All Saints' Day make this a place not so much about death, but about life, creating a cemetery that is a true treasure in the city. Traveling the countryside in New Orleans, Louisiana, I'm Andrew McRae.
Thanks so much, Andrew. And you can see more of his stories by downloading the My Farm TV app. When we come back, Machinery Pete has this week's Tractor Tales.